Growing up in Gurgaon has been weird. For instance, a lot of people who are new to Gurgaon, they're asking me about my favorite places in Gurgaon or my sweet spots where I go when I'm, uncomfortable or just anxious to relax and everything. I don't think there's absolutely any spot in Gurgaon where, I would go just to make my mind at ease. And I think growing up, it's mostly been from home to school, back from school to home, so there wasn't much to explore per se. But also, Gurgaon doesn't have as many places to explore. When I used to come back from school, there was a group of boys who used to follow us back home. I think at some point you also hope that they will stop. Also, that was my only way from my bus stop to my house. And so we decided that once my friend would drop me on a scooty back home, or I will walk with someone, or I used to go to my friend's place and then I used to stay there for 30 minutes. This happened, I think, for 2-3 weeks continuously. We used to do this, and after a while we just realized that we've got to just walk and see what happens, because it was daylight, it was afternoon. If something were to happen, we were just 5 minutes away from home, so it shouldn't be as dangerous, so to say, to take the risk. Finally, one day I remember, so my friend and I, we were both together. We looked them in the eye, we asked them what their issue was, and they didn't say anything. They laughed at us, and I think the sheer audacity to do something like that and then laugh at our faces, I think that's something, it's triggering. It doesn't bother them. I don't think a lot of men understand that the kind of vulnerabilities we feel when we are being followed, and so it's very trivial for them. And so the audacity to laugh at my face, I swear I could have slapped him then. But then there's a place called Ashok Vihar that's very near to my own this thing. It's not a part of a sector, and a lot of adults from the sector have a certain how do I say it, they do not feel very comfortable with that part of the population, although it's just like, this is my sector in the street and this is theirs, where Ashok Vihar starts. And so a lot of them will say, Ashok Vihar ke log aa rahe hain park mein, you shouldn't go there. And so once when I was walking with this friend, this person, he's sitting in the park and he's sitting on the bench and he starts recording, or he starts clicking pictures while we are walking. And we notice that he has been clicking pictures, and so we leave the park, because one, I think the idea behind not going up to him or not creating a scene was also because this park was frequented by our own parents, and everybody who lives there are neighbors and everybody knew us. And so we just we thought we'd leave and come probably at another time on some other day. And so I think these small incidents have been happening since school. I started my schooling back in Sector 40, so that was a good school. So to say, it was a residential. It was in a residential area, and then so they shifted us to Sona Road in Bonsey, to the newer part of Gurgaon that was still under construction, and it didn't have a lot of apartments or buildings that are now there. And it was mostly just barren land, and in between farmhouses, and there's swimming pool, and they've made this fancy school building and everything, but it's in the middle of nowhere. So from my home to school in Sona Road, it used to take me 50 minutes to travel one way. And then we used to go from Old Gurgaon to this village called Badshapur. You have a lot of butchers there. And what they do is usually on the road, and you can see while you're traveling. And that's how I left meat. There was a particular stigma that was attached to boys in school, because a lot of them came from Badshapur and the village areas nearby. And so there was a very visible difference in terms of class backgrounds of people that came to school, and also in terms of caste backgrounds, if I should say. And so there was a particular stigma towards those certain kind of boys who were, always yelling and abusing, always at the backbenchers and this and that. And so that was school. And so this incident happened in class 8th, when this person comes up to me. He narrates this story that he has had a dream, and he wishes to have children with me someday. And he's describing me the events of his daydream and this and that. And I'm absolutely not sure, one, why he's doing that, because to be able to tell his friends is another thing, but to come up to me and I don't talk to this boy. And so I got so angry, because he was like, I'll touch you there and this and that. And I slapped him in front of everybody. My class teacher, she was told, and she called me and she's like, what has happened? I'm like, this has happened, and I'm not sorry, I don't regret it. And if he would to say that thing to me again, I would slap him again. And she's like, no, this is not the way you should be doing it. And then next Saturday, I think it was the parents teacher meeting. But before that, the same day I went home and, I had narrated the entire thing to my mother. I still remember we were standing near the washing machine and she's like, क्यों किया लेकिन मारा क्यों, मारने की क्या ज़रूरत थी, ऐसा तो होता रहेगा, मतलब अब तुम, now this has started and now you're going to leave school soon and you're going to go to college and you're going to be on your own, and these incidents are bound to happen and they're bound to happen more frequently, and this is the first time this has happened, and you can't keep on slapping everybody that comes, and comes and say anything to you. And at that moment I didn't say anything to her, but then I also felt, I shouldn't say guilty, but I did kind of feel that maybe I shouldn't have done it, because everybody around me, my teachers, my parents, everybody was asking me to not do it. A year later, one of my senior verbally abused me, and he was standing on the floor above and he showed me a middle finger, he said something, and then I ran upstairs and then I slapped him again. And this incident, I think he was about to hit me back again, but then a lot of his friends were there, so they stopped them. But this incident, we didn't tell our teacher, we didn't tell our parents, and so it ended there. Another incident happened in school. So I was discussing this with one of my friends the other day, very recently. So this teacher, she's an English teacher and she's very sweet, very old. She comes up to me and she tells me that this person, Kavaljeet, he has put his hands on a girl's breast. And has something happened with you also? Because I know that Kavaljeet used to, like you or something. And I'm like, no. And so those are the kind of people, those are the kind of men, so to say, in our school. I'm not saying that all of them came from certain places, because some of them did come from the area that I was staying in. I remember there was this one particular boy who used to stay 5 minutes away from home, and he used to follow me around whenever I was walking in the sector, and this was a very frequent thing to do. I told his parents about it, nothing happened, and then I think they just shifted, and so the incidents stopped happening. I think real fear, a very major part of real fear comes from the imagination that something can happen. For instance, when I'm in an auto, because I've read incidents happening to women in autos, because I've read women being pushed out of autos or somebody getting inside an auto, that imagination that something can happen makes it real for me to feel that something like that can happen to me as well. And while nothing of the sort has actually happened, what I still do is I make sure that I'm sitting right at the corner of my auto seat, and this has started to happen very recently. So initially, my belongings used to be somewhere in the auto, and I didn't used to care. But now I have my bag really, tightly attached to me. Always have my phone in my hand, because I always have that fear that somebody is going to snatch that away while I'm in the auto. And I'm always on the corner of the seat, because recently this has started to come up that I have this imagination that men are going to enter from both sides of the auto and I'm going to be stuck in the middle, and so it's better that I sit at the corner, because if they do try to enter from one side, I'm going to jump from the other. And so that imagination has turned into, has made it kind of real for me. And so yeah, I think that's where the imagination and reality kind of merge for me. So I think another example would be, for instance, when I'm traveling by cabs especially. So very recently, about 2 months ago, I was to stay at one of my friend's place for the night, and some plan changed, and then it was around 8:30 p.m. and we decided that we'd go back home. And so I booked a cab home, and then I knew that my parents won't approve of it, because 8 p.m. is the deadline for coming back by auto or by cab. They're okay with me staying over at the friend's place for the night, they just don't want me traveling in the night. It takes 1 hour from her place to mine. And I decided to tell my mom when I was only 20 minutes away, because I know the moment I tell her, she would be continuously on text, she'd be calling me wherever I reached. And so 20 minutes away from home, I tell her that this has happened, plans have changed, I'm coming back home. It was 9 p.m. and I was reaching home at 9:20. And she called me up, she's scolding me on the phone, why have you left, why did you take a cab, kya marzi chal rahi hai apni? And I'm like, it's okay, I'm already in the cab, I'm reaching home, I'm trying to calm her down. And then for the next entire 20 minutes, every 2 minutes, she's like, where are you, where are you, where are you? And there is absolutely no question of me not responding or even me not being online at that moment, because the moment I go offline, she will start calling. it was about 4 or 5 years ago. So it was my birthday, and so I was then in DU North Campus, and so I used to travel every day from my house to the campus, and it used to take me 2 hours one way, and so it's I think 11 a.m. or 12 p.m. and my friends and I decide that we'll go out for brunch, we'll have some drinks and this and that. And we do. And so brunch turns into lunch and we're drinking, we're having fun, and now it's 4 p.m. And now I think that, I should finally go back home because my parents had planned this surprise party, and they were about to give me a laptop or something. And it was my first one, so it was kind of special moment that was waiting for me to happen when I reach home. And 4 p.m. I meet some of my seniors from the debating society, and they're like, let's go out for a party. You can reach home by 8, and so you leave by 6. And so I'm like, okay. And so I go out with them, and then we start drinking and doing other things. But then it turns and suddenly it's 6:30 p.m. and all of us are drunk. We're way too drunk. And then I'm like, and we're 2 minutes away from metro. We're on the road. I can see the metro station. I'm like, this is it. I am going to go home. And so there was this one other friend who had to go back with me, and we were like, both of us will go. And then we start walking towards the metro, and suddenly that idiot collapses on the road. And in trying to pick him up, I fall down and this and that, and all of us realize that we are way too sloshed for this. We cannot possibly go back, for 2 hours, travel for 2 hours and then reach home. And so we're almost in the condition to pass out. And so my seniors decide that it'll be better if I stay over at my senior's place for the night. And so by the time we reach our senior's place in North Campus, I passed out. And then my dad started calling, and then I wasn't picking up the phone, obviously. And then one of my seniors, they picked up the phone. My dad talked to her. He yelled at her, "What are you doing with my daughter? Send her back home, make me talk to her," and this and that. And I was absolutely, I had no idea this was happening because I was gone. And so they called one of my other friends who lived, I think, 20 minutes away from the senior's place, and that idiot told them that she is having some stomach issue and she has slept. It's like, wake her up, and mujhe abhi baat karni hai. And my dad, when he gets angry, and he yells, and he has this, I think, more than anything, because he raises up his voice so much, I fear his voice, so to say. And so my friend traveled from her place to the senior's place, and they're waking me up, talk to your dad. And 2 of them have had scoldings from my family. And so finally I wake up, and I'm like, yeah, hello, and I'm not in a position to talk. They understand. And so things eventually calm down, I sleep, and then 4:30 a.m. I am up the next morning, and 5:15 I think the first metro used to run. And I take the first metro, and I'm home by 6:30. And I go home, and I'm trying to imagine the ways. I'm like, I'll just say it was stomachache or food poisoning or something and of that sort. And then he asked me, were you drunk last night? I'm like, yes. And then he didn't talk to me for 3 days. And then my mother started crying. And then it was a whole 2-hour, I don't want to say drama because it was irresponsible of me, but then also exaggeration of anger and a lot of nahi karna chahiye and this and that. And in the moment I also understood, because it was 100% my fault, I shouldn't have. But then and so 3 days we're not talking, the entire family is fighting. And so my sister used to stay at home at that time, and she told my dad that you go out to drink every Saturday. Why is that okay for you and not okay for her to drink with her friends? And my dad left alcohol after that. And so I was so guilt stricken that this man who is usually not as restrictive, so to say, or not as conservative, so to say, he has left alcohol because of something that I did. And so I think for about 1 or 2 years then I didn't drink at all, because I was like, this can't happen again and this and that. And so I think with my parents, I personally think they don't come from a conservative family, so to say, because their cousins and their brothers and sisters, all of them, they party, they drink, they smoke, and they do this and that. But the only difference is that all of them have boys as their children. None of them had 2 female children at home. And so I think parenting brought out a lot of restrictions and a lot of possessiveness in them, because when you see my parents with their own friends and when you see my parents with other male members, young male members of the family, they're usually insisting that they have a drink. They're usually, talking about their relationships or their this and that. But I think growing up, having two female children in the house, I think that kind of did make them slightly more. And so, yeah. So last year I was out with my friends and my mother still has flashbacks of that thing happening, that it was 3 p.m. and I didn't pick up her phone, and I was out on brunch, I was in Gurgaon, and the phone was on the table in my bag or something, and I didn't pick it up, and then she's texting me, where are you, I didn't see it, and then she started calling all of my friends, and I'm like, I'm celebrating my 24th birthday. You can't possibly be, contacting my friends, because it's not just, because it's embarrassing for me, because I'm not actually doing anything and I'm okay, I'm safe. I tell her that this and that. But then, so my friends, they either, idiots that they will either switch off their phones or say something like, I am elsewhere, I don't know what's happening, and this and that. And then the friends will call me that, your mom has been calling, and please handle this, because I am out for my own convocation. And it was unpleasant for them, because they shouldn't have the responsibility of taking care of me, and embarrassing for me, because my mother has been calling all my friends, and so I stopped giving the phone numbers of my friends to my mother.
What happens to them? Presumably parents are no longer feeling responsibility.
The husband is.
So your married friends and relatives will always inform their husband exactly in the same way?
Yes, not friends but relatives. I know the female ones, they either do not go out at night, or they go out just with their husbands, or they have their husband picking them up from the place that they are at. Or like in the case of the aunt that we recently met, she takes her elder son who's just in class 12th with her. And I have absolutely no idea what sense of security that provides, but for some reason a male companion, even if he is, let's say, 14 years old or 15 years old, that makes her feel more secure than leaving by her own. So I think when it's not parents, it's definitely the partner that's doing the job of the parent. Yeah. So this nephew of mine, I remember a couple of times my cousin tried to, send him with me so that I will be safe, and he was 12 years old at the time and I'm 20. I'm like, this doesn't make sense. He can't possibly do anything if someone were to attack me, and yeah, but that's how it works. I did my college in like 5 years of my university in Delhi, and before that, actually going to college, there was no scope of me exploring the city on my own, because I was still in school, I was still a teenager. The autos weren't the Uber that's here now, that wasn't there back when I was 17 or 18, and so a lot of exploring did not happen. And in Delhi, it was relatively safer, because all of these places that I used to go to, we used to go to together as friends. And one day, there was a lot of protests when I was in college, both in Ramjas and JNU. And then, so a lot of streets that I visited, they were occupied by these same age group, people of same age group. And so a lot of them have always been there on those spots, and you won't find, I think in Delhi, the difference was also that I haven't seen deserted spaces as much as I've seen in Gurgaon. In Delhi, there's also, there's bookstores everywhere you go to Khan Market. So there's no place like Khan Market in Gurgaon. There's only, let's say, Galleria that's there, or Sector 29 that's there if you want to go have, and have fun. But apart from these 2 or 3 places, there are no places of leisure, so to say, and there are no places to hang out or just to chill in Gurgaon. And so it's always been more about the traveling. Like from home, I'm either going to some other place. There hasn't been like I'm stopping on the road to get something for myself, or to go to, let's say, market complexes, or to visit a bookstore that's on the roadside, because none of it is there. So while right now also, like while I was coming, I think the strange thing about Gurgaon is that some part of it, especially older Gurgaon, has always been under construction. And so a lot of it becomes deserted because of the construction, the large scale construction that's been taking place. There's some underbridge being constructed, there's some overbridge being constructed, and so what they do is they block a lot of roads, and then they make all these small passes in between the villages where we have to go through, and those are unrecognizable because even there the streets are small. You do not have let's say you know, again, you do not have footpaths, you do not have as many street lights, you do not have, they're very narrow lanes जो आपको जहाँ से जाना है. And so I think a part of that it comes from there. And yes,
we have talked about a lot of fear, and basically fear of sexual assault or physical assault on women by men. Is there any joyful sex in Gurgaon for young people? Do people have sex? Do they have love? Do they touch each other? Anything positive?
there is, but it's not visible. There definitely is. So
Any experience of your friends or yourself or anybody which is good?
yes, definitely. So one of my friends, she's actively dating, she's been on Bumble, Hinge and this and that, and her experiences so far have been good. There obviously have been some bad experiences, but those were to do with men per se, not the location of Gurgaon, so to say. But in terms of visible love, you won't see because I don't think there are any places where I'll find, you know, couples hanging out exclusively by themselves. Obviously, I think there are certain places, let's say Galleria, for example, or let's say Cyber Hub, for instance, where you will see women, you know, women and men hanging together, hand in hand, and this and that. But that's not very common. I think one of the strange things also about Gurgaon that I've noticed is that a lot of men hold hands, but those are not, I don't think those are romantic relationships. So it's hot, it's 2 p.m., it's full afternoon sun, and they walk, you know, holding hands. And that's not something to do with, let's say, sexual relationships, but it's just something that's very common in Gurgaon and something that I've witnessed over the years, and it's not prejudice, so to say. But if they were to come out tomorrow, then probably, you know, there's no scope of them coming out. So I do have one friend who hasn't yet come out to her parents, and in my own home, let's say, about relationships, we do not talk about relationships. Since school, it was always talking to boys is forbidden. And boys used to call at home, and then my mother used to ask me, who is calling, किससे बात कर रही हो, इतनी देर तक क्यों बात कर रही हो? And so the scope of it happening, and because we didn't have mobile phones, we used to have landlines then, and so the landline was placed in the center of the house, and you can't possibly be talking to a boy in the center of the house with your mother always, you know, present. And my parents, for instance, they do not have an idea about any of my relationships. So with my sister, because I've seen, so once one of her male friends had come to visit her at our home, and my dad scolded him कि स्कूल में क्यों नहीं बात कर ली, घर पे क्यों आ रहे हो, घर पे आने की क्या ज़रूरत है. He didn't let him enter the house. It was like gate के बाहर से ही all of this yelling is happening, and that boy got scared, and he's like, I'm not coming back to your house, Riya. This is not the, you know, this is not happening. And so I witnessed that, and so I saw how, and so my sister, she's more open with my parents. She's the one usually sharing things about her life. But with her, I've seen the reactions that she gets. And I'm not sure why she continues to share things with my parents, because I wouldn't, after my friend being scolded, I wouldn't dare tell them that I was seeing other men. But and so talks about relationships never happened. It's only recently that they have started talking about relationships with my sister. And that's also because now she's of a marriageable age. She's 28, and now they want to know whether or not she has a boyfriend, or so to say. And the only purpose behind that is whether we should ourselves be starting to look for, you know, a husband for you and this and that. And so now we have started to talk. But with me, there's no. The men's side of family, they usually, what I have witnessed is they usually do not have issues with them having a girlfriend, and they are usually okay with the girlfriend coming over at their place. And so I think relationships in that sense, they're bound to suffer, because one, you can't explain possibly explain to your partner that a 24-year-old grown woman, she cannot come out of the house after 7 p.m. because her parents are asking not to. And so a lot of lies go behind, building that kind of narrative that, I have work after 7 p.m., I can't see you. And the truth is, I think it's also embarrassing because you're almost in your mid-20s, you can't tell them that you're still living with your parents and that your parents have, asked you to be home by 8. And so a lot of those plans, they go unrealized. The relationship is secretive. They cannot talk about it to anybody in their family or to any of the adults so as to manage when things go bad. And so it's only just the group of friends that are aware of the things that are happening. And I think in that sense, then yes, because if the parents are aware, if they're supportive, if they know the person that they're dating, then obviously there is a safe, an aspect that it might make it safer for the woman to go out and date freely, because because the parents would know that this person is there and she's seeing someone. I think some part of it might relate, but not all of it, I'd say. They might turn out to be unpleasant. For instance, one of my friends was in a relationship for 7 years and the parents had no idea, absolutely. And they used to live in the same society, and they used to go out on the roof and to make out and everything. And they had to hide from the neighbors because everybody in the family knew everybody. And somehow, I think in all of the cases with my friends, the parents have somehow caught them once or twice. And so that the trust that was there, it does break. And so for, let's say, a year or two or year after the incident, they're still questioning whether or not their child is still doing the same thing. And let's say if they were to leave this woman at home alone before they caught them, they wouldn't now.
Do you want to get married?
Do I want to get married?
Or rather, what do you think of marriage?
I'm not opposed to marriage per se, but then I think I'm more comfortable with the idea of, let's say, living in. I do not necessarily have that yearning for a very long commitment. But I think at some point, yes, but I don't see myself getting married, let's say, even in the next 10 years. My sister is 28 and she is still, she has a boyfriend and they're figuring out if they want to get married. And it's only been 6 months that they have started their relationship. And you have my parents, asking her every other week, ki, बताना आप कहाँ progress हुआ, अब कुछ हुआ क्या, अब progress हुआ क्या, should we start making plans and this and that.
What is the difference between living in and marriage?
I think a part of it does have to do with the documentation, for instance, the legality of it. Breaking up, the difference between breaking up and getting a divorce, it doesn't have to be as hectic, or it doesn't have to, I'm just not sure if I'm okay to go through the entire process and not come out of not hurt.
Commitment or the complexity,
the legal complexity more, because commitment I do not have an issue with, but definitely I do realize that things might not work out, and for me I think living in might be better to sort of, when it comes to, let's say, ending things, than to go through the entire process of court and getting a divorce, even though it has become easier. But then I think it's always going to be a hassle, and also because in our family divorce is still not talked about in very open. So when I'm traveling in the auto, so I make sure that I have the GPS on my phone on. So once I remember, this is very recently, like 2-3 days ago, the auto wala took another turn I wasn't familiar with, and I'm constantly looking on my phone. I'm like, is this the right way? Is there a turn ahead that he's going to make, and is that going to get me on the right location? And then I think constantly, because so once I was coming late home from Delhi and I was in the cab. And I was like, I'm unfamiliar with the place that I'm in. And so I texted my friends sharing my live location. And so they followed me. They kept checking on me whether I was okay and this and that. And I know for a fact that I'm not the only one doing it. A lot of my friends do this. I still have the location of one of my friends that I was following from yesterday. And so it's a network of women. And I think with all of my friends, whether in different circles, whether in different networks, they always have 2 or 3 women in place who will always be there to, you know, check on the location that where you're going, and the time that you leave and the time you're supposed to reach at, and you tell them that. So, for instance, while coming in an auto, once I was at Ifko Chowk or MG Road, and this person was following me throughout my metro ride, and I'm not even sure that if he was following me, but there was a sense that he was, because he kept staring at me. He kept, you know, coming behind me, and I know that he could have walked faster than me, but then he would stop and let me pass, and then he would come, you know, back. And so this had been happening for the past 30 minutes, and so. I called one of my friends, their phones was busy, and so I acted like I was calling one of them. I told them that I was here and I was getting in an auto and I was coming over to their place, and this is when I should reach. And so I wasn't talking, but I made sure that the person knew that I was at least talking to someone or making them aware of the location that I was at. And so this is not even this is not uncommon. This has become very routine, very normal for them to do things. I get calls from my friends at odd hours saying that, you know, I'm here and I should be reaching here. And I think a part of it, I'm not sure if this pertains just to Gurgaon, because even intercity travel, even in intercity travel, especially after 7 p.m, we're usually in the habit of texting and using the GPS. But yes, I mean, my parents, sometimes they've asked me to share my live location with them so they can follow when they know that I'll be late. So I think definitely technology in that way, it has helped them to feel less anxious, to feel less stressed. And but for me, I also feel that sharing my location with, especially with my parents, that does take away some control from me, because I don't think I'm the person who's used to always being on the phone and who's used to always informing that I will be here at this time. And with my mother, so she has recently started to do a lot of this, and it hasn't, I think it's also been because initially I was in school, so there was no way of me going elsewhere. So after college, a lot of it has started, and I am not the person who usually, you know, I hate it when my parents try to take responsibility of me. I'm like, I can handle myself, I'm okay, it's just metro. I'm traveling from Huda city center to, let's say, Rohini, and she'll ask me to text me when I reach Rohini. I'm like, I'm in the metro, where else would I go? It's not even in a cab, it's not even an auto, it's not a road, and it's just, I have to change these trains. But no, I mean, if I don't text back, she'll call me, and then I'm in the middle of the work and she'll keep calling, she won't, you know, hang up. And so even before I'm at Rohini, I'll text her 10 minutes before that I've reached. I'll be stuck in traffic and I'll text her that I've reached, because otherwise it's always at the back of her mind that she hasn't reached. And even though she's in school, she's taking a class, she'll call me from in between her class and she's like, have you reached?